Welcome everybody who is watching now live. We are live streaming in the Moms Letting Go group, or if you are catching this replay later, welcome. Today we are interviewing Courtney Jenkins, and I was just sharing in the group a little earlier, why do you care about Courtney Jenkins? Okay, so moms, you have addicted loved ones who may be in jail now or may be headed to jail. And Courtney was somebody I met in our community at a support group. And way back, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, I met Courtney, and she had this idea of how to revamp our jail program for those who were in jail with a substance use disorder. And it was just really in her creation that I met her. And then the next thing I heard was she was implementing this program, and I was awestruck. I was like so proud of her courage of going forth and doing all that she did for the betterment of this community. And I love the community we live in. So welcome, Courtney Jenkins, JCAP coordinator for our Kosciuszko County Jail. Welcome.
Thank you.
So when did you first birth this idea for JCAP? And for those who are listening, JCAP stands for Jail Chemical Addiction Program. When did you first come up with this idea?
Yeah. So it's not my idea.
Okay.
This was, so Dearborn County, Indiana, has a JCAP program. They implemented the first program about, I would say 12 or 13 years ago now. Their program is strictly recovery based. That's their classes. They don't do life skills classes. They do recovery based programming. They do about 3 hours a day, 5 days a week for 3 months. And the state attorney general, Curtis Hill, in 2018 came out with an offer for every county in Indiana to start a JCAP program in their county. And for us, 2018 was an election year for our sheriff's office. And so the sitting sheriff, who had been appointed because of some issues that we had had with the previous sheriff, he had been the chief deputy. And so he became the sheriff by default. So he was running for election in 2018. And so he jumped on the chance to get this grant from the attorney general's office, and they came up and they made a big thing about it, and how we were going to start this program. And then that particular sheriff lost the primary, so he was not going to be the sheriff, and the whole process just kind of died with that. And I was incredibly frustrated. At the time, I was going into the jail twice a week and doing smart recovery classes with the females. And so I just started nagging at the jail commander. When are you going to get this program going? What can I do to help? How are we going to do this? What are your ideas for this? And he looked at me one day and said, "This is going nowhere. We're not doing this. I'm not doing this." And I was like, I will do this. I want this program, because I saw from firsthand experience from my own son how you go into jail and your criminal thinking increases and your friend base increases, and it's not great friends. And just the ideas and the methods and everything, it was just bad. He came out worse every time. And what I really saw from the females, and then I started to recognize it in my son, was that they have no self-esteem, and they're so broken and so beat down. And then they spend their time in jail, and when they get ready to leave, we say, "See ya, don't come back." And they literally will say that sometimes when people get out of jail, "Don't come back," or "I'll see you next time." I've heard that said. And so it was really discouraging to me. And I just thought, we have this opportunity to start this program and make a difference in not just people's lives, but in the culture of our jail, because not everybody gets to participate in the program. We can't, and not everybody wants to, but we can affect change in the jail culture. And so, So I continued to make noise about it. And eventually I
Yay.
went into the, I went into the sheriff's office and I said, look, I I will do this. I want to do this. Give me something to do. So they gave me the packet of stuff from Dearborn County and asked me to just convert it to, say, Kosciuszko County. And so I did that. And in that process, I was able to really study up on all of Dearborn's processes, everything from the consents and the releases to the way that they work with their prosecutors and their judges and their work release and community corrections, all of that stuff. And so I converted everything to Kosciuszko County, and then I created an outline that was prioritized by what needed to happen first in order for this program to be implemented in our county jail. And I had like things highlighted, that questions that I didn't know, just it was all very clearly laid out because I'm a pretty simple person. And so I needed it to be just very blunt and basic. And so I took it back into the jail commander and I was like, okay, here's what you need to do. And he was like, okay. And so because I was teaching classes with the girls, he came to me and he said, okay, so pick 12 girls. Who do you know, and so I did. And 8 of them were logistically, because I didn't know any of the logistics side of who would qualify. I didn't know what their sentences were or how long they were going to be there or anything. So 8 of those girls had enough time. They fit the criteria for being in the program, and they were put in the program at that time. So this was October of 2018. We had 3 hours a day for 3 days a week. And then when our new sheriff took office, I had already been in his ear all fall and winter about, we need this program to go. You need this program to go. Our community needs this program. We have the backing. I have this vision. And we sat down and I shared with him what I felt JCAP should be. Which was not just recovery classes, but also heavy life skills. So we actually do a 50% balance, life skills and recovery classes, which has proven to be incredibly effective. And I'm super proud of it. And so anyway, through that process, our sheriff, Kyle Dupes, he jumped on board. He saw the need for this program in our community. He had been a state trooper for 20 plus years. He had arrested so many of the people that were in the jail at least once, and he knew the struggle that they had faced, and he recognized that it wasn't fair. And I've heard him say this in many speeches and just at different community events. He said, you know, it is not fair for us to arrest them and then not offer help. We cannot arrest them and feel like they're just going to suddenly have this come to Jesus moment and change their life around without support and help, because he knew the family backstories and he knew the abuse and he knew the trauma, and that doesn't fix itself by spending 6 months in jail. And so he took office January 1st, and he called me into his office January 3rd and asked if I would run the program. And so I did. For the first year, I did it as a volunteer because the budgets had already been done the previous year. There wasn't money there. And so I just volunteered, and we very, very quickly, like within the first month, we had 5 days of programming going. And within the first 2 months, we had 6 hours of classes, 5 days a week going.
Oh my God.
And within the first 4 months, we had 6 to 8 hours of classes. And it was a slow process that first year, as far as the culture change and getting the jailers on board with the program, because it definitely creates more work for them in their job. And they're jaded. They see these people all the time, repeatedly. And so they didn't see hope. They didn't understand addiction. And I'm not necessarily a quiet little mouse. And so when I
love that.
I would be in Central and they would be talking about, you know, somebody that was being brought in, and there was maybe some negative comments or whatever, I would just speak up and say, you know, they didn't choose this. You know, they don't like this lifestyle. Occasionally, it only happened a couple of times because I think it was really embarrassing for everyone. someone would say, if more parents would put the smack down on their kids, or if more parents would
Oh,
get their kids under control. And here I sit, the mom of an addict, someone who may or may not have been in the jail at that very moment. And I would say, I raised my son. My son went to church every Sunday. My son was loved. My son went on vacations and rode dirt bikes and camped with his family and has little sisters that adore him.
go
And
girl. Yeah.
he wasn't raised like this. Not all these people were raised like this. And so they have slowly shifted their opinions and their thoughts. And I am so
Wow.
happy to say that here we are, 2 years later, just over 2 years later. And I have jailers come to me and say, hey, Johnny in F block, he could really use your program next time. And, or I was talking with so-and-so and is there any way that you could get them some resources for meetings on the outside? Like they care, they have seen the success of our participants, and
Wow.
it was like, oh, maybe we can help. Maybe this works. And I think by human nature, we want to see the best in people. And so they've just graciously come on board, and it's been
Oh.
amazing to watch that transformation in them.
So any mom who is listening, oh my goodness, like you have to be inspired by this, because what Courtney is saying is in every single one of us. Like we all feel the same way. We, more than anybody else, understand that our kids don't want to be this way and there has to be better solutions. So you said, yeah, I didn't create this, but here's the thing. You were instrumental, the leader in helping other people to see your vision. So in that Dearborn, it is that something that they share in that county? Do they share their program with other states and counties? Would they? And how would you?
So they definitely, so they got a big financial incentive for sharing their program with counties in Indiana. But JCAP is not unique to Indiana. There are these programs in county jails across the country. They're not all called JCAP. Some of them
Okay.
are RSAT, which stands for Residential Substance Abuse Treatment. Some of them are RSAP, which is Residential Substance Abuse Program. And Indiana has had other RSAT or RSAP programs for the last 10 years. The Attorney General just became aware of Dearborn County because I think theirs was kind of the longest running at the time.
Okay.
And so that was the one that he kind of jumped on. But yes, I would say, so in my experience, I reached out to many different counties in Indiana when I first came on in January of 2019. And I just said, I hear you have this program. Would you be willing to talk to me about it? I'm trying to get ours up and running. How do you get your funding? How do you do your selection program? How do you do this? And every county that I called was more than happy to talk to me. I toured different facilities. They showed me their program blocks because we keep our participants separate from general population. It helps with that kind of, it's called like the Skid Row mentality or the jail mentality. And so they were incredibly gracious and super helpful.
Wow.
And I have had counties from across the country call me and say, hey, we saw this on the news, or so such county referred us, would you be so welcome? And without fail, every time I probably take up more time than what they had intended, but I am super proud of our program. And we do have something that is very unique. Not every county and very few counties focus on the life skills and the building of the self-esteem the way that we do.
So how can you tell us a little bit about that and how it's different?
Yeah. So, most people recognize that they need recovery help. So that kind of the standard programs for recovery help are moral recognition therapy, matrix, thinking for a change, AA, smart recovery, celebrate recovery. we all know those programs work on different levels, and that they're good, solid programs. And they're easy to find instructors for. And the courts are familiar with them, so they recognize them. But what I saw when I talked with the females in the jail, I came in for probably 2.5 years before I started working with JCAP, doing smart recovery, and hearing these women say, I don't look in the mirror because I hate what I see. Or just the comments that they would make about themselves. I'm a piece of shit. I could never do that. And it just broke my heart, because I started to recognize that same self-esteem deficiency in my own son, and how he was embarrassed. And I've had girls say, if you knew the things I've done, and I'm like, you struggle with addiction, it happens. And they're like, no, things I've done. And so we talk about it, and they are incredibly eager to unburden themselves.
Sure.
And so you learn
Healthy.
a lot. Yeah, it is really healthy. And so I watched these women as they came to class every week, twice a week. And they would do their homework, and they would bring it in, and they would be so proud to hand me this paper that they filled out. And I'm a mom of 4. And so my vocabulary is, it's very, I'm so proud of you. Oh, good job. Like, those are normal mom things that we say,
sure.
Right? The number of people that have said to me, you're the first person that's ever told me they're proud of me, just breaks my heart. And people don't believe it when I say, I have had so many people say that to me. I have letters from participants in our program and from females that I worked with before that say, no one was ever proud of me until I met you. And it just breaks my heart, because the first time someone said that to me, I didn't even remember that I had said it. And then I thought, oh my gosh, how could I be so blasé about saying I'm proud of someone? Now I have to really focus on that. And it's something that I say I say it very deliberately now, because I want them to feel that I am so proud of them. And so really focusing on that self-esteem aspect of our program makes a huge difference. And so we are incredibly lucky here in Kosciuszko County, Indiana, because we have this amazing community with tons of resources. And we have all of these organizations that are more than willing to jump in. So I have fitness instructors. I've never paid for a fitness class. They all just volunteer their time, and they love to come in. And the jail commander at first, so he was an officer for 20 years as well, and a Marine before that. And he was kind of hard-nosed, like, no, you just do things by the book. And he was like, you want yoga classes for these women? Are you kidding me? And I was like, yes, yoga is so good for them mentally. And I tried to explain the science of exercise. But even more, and I think what he got was, these women need to see the change that they're making. And when they see how strong they're getting through yoga, they see the physical difference in them. They sleep better. They want to eat better, because they are seeing the benefits of the changes that they're making. It translates into other aspects of their lives. And so we do art therapy, which is amazing. And I had a guy show me his art journal yesterday, and he was like, I didn't even know I could draw, and look at this. I'm so proud of it. And I was like, I'm so proud of it. Wow. It was so good. And we have music therapy. We have a gentleman who owns it's called Music Encounters here. And they do music lessons, and they do songwriting and production. And he is coming in, and he's had our men, this is the first group that has done this class. He's had the men write down different thoughts about their past, about where they want their future to go. And they are working in collaboration with each other to build this song. And then he takes it back each week to his studio, and he's got a couple of people there that are working on it with them. And they're writing the song, and they're saying, it's just exciting to go into the block, and to have the men say, oh, you're good, man, I didn't know where we were going with this at first, but I can really see it coming around, and it gives them hope. Like, there's very little that you look forward to. Coming around your family means you're going to get a lecture, you're going to feel like the black sheep of the family, you're going to, you're going to get the looks, or even if you don't, you feel like you do. You have lost so many jobs, whatever. There's just so many negatives in that life, and they lose hope and they forget, I think, how to hope. And so when they start to see it come about, it's exciting. We have a bank that comes in and does finance classes, and I have a guy right now. I mean, he is just on fire for fixing his credit, and he's been calling his mom and giving his mom like ideas on different things that he needs to do once he gets out. And she's had his credit report run for him so that he can like really start to be proactive. And she called me and she said, I haven't heard this much hope in him for the longest time. And she's just in tears because something like a finance class is sparking him to do better. And at the same time, they're getting the recovery work. They're learning to recognize their triggers. They're learning about the science of addiction so that they understand what they're fighting against, which I think is hugely important.
Huge. Right. Yeah, I hear that too. I have a mom in the group who asked this question. Would you be able to share your written processes with us to present to our law enforcement officials in our community? And I think you kind of answered that, is they would probably have to go to start with Dearborn County in Indiana and contact their law enforcement. Am I right? Because most of my moms aren't from Indiana. No. Oh.
Okay. So I don't think you really have to do that. The program is simple. But what I will say is the first place you need to start is with your sheriff. If you can't get in to see your sheriff, start with your jail commander. And you have to have those two people on board. Without their support, this program is going to be super tough because you have to have their support in order to get the court's support. And you have to have the court support. You need the prosecutor to be able to sit down with you. But I mean, I am happy to kind of write an outline of what I think needs to happen first, second, third, and why, because I think understanding the why is always so important. Because there are a lot of moving parts to it, but at the core, it's a basic common sense program.
It's just being a mom to people who need hope and self-esteem. I just want to take a side, kind of on the side here, just so, because sometimes we women in particular don't think they have the credentials to do this job. And when you're talking, I love how you say it's simple to you. It's just being a mom to people who are need hope, right? But it also sounds like you're a quote counselor. I'm not a therapist either, but I don't think you have a degree in counseling, do you? So what is your background?
I do not. So I dropped out of college after one semester to get married and have a family. And I have been a stay-at-home mom since. I have never had a real job. I mean, I say that. I taught reading groups at my kids' elementary school for like 2 years. I think it was a total of 6 hours a week that I was in the school. That is the extent of my education.
And thank you for sharing that. Yes, because moms, you don't have to have like an MBA or a bachelor's or a degree in therapy to do what Courtney has done here. So how many people?
I will tell you, I was told by a different county, and it was one of the counties I've mentioned, that I was not qualified to do what I do, because I was a liability to the program, and that I needed this degree and that degree, and I got a phone feeling really like, wow. Like, I am a stay-at-home
you didn't measure up. Yeah.
I'm not good enough. Like, what am I doing? Who do I think I am to be able to do this? One of our counselors that comes in daily to do group and individual counseling with our individuals, I'm the one that brought him on board. He's very well educated. He ran the largest mental health facility in Northern Indiana. And I was frustrated, and I didn't say anything to anybody for several weeks over what I had been told because I was embarrassed. I mean, I was like, oh, what if somebody finds out
Right.
that I'm not qualified? And during a conversation with him, I told him what this lady had said to me, and he was like, you're not like, and I preface many conversations with my participants with, I'm not a counselor. This is my opinion.
Right. Yeah.
And I say that at community meetings and with the sheriff, like, this is my opinion. This is what I think. But I am humble enough and smart enough to know that you have to put the right people in the right places. So we have amazing mental health professionals that come in. I'm not going to hire a mechanic to come in and teach art therapy. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I have
Sure.
put the right people in the right places. And that sometimes takes a little bit of humility on my part, because I get ahead of myself and feel like I could do it all. But when you start working with the people in your community, the right people become very evident very quickly because they stand out, and you just go, I want to work with that person.
Sure.
And they will connect with my people. Like, I have had many people come to me and say, you know, I would love to do this. And as I talk with them, while it's a nice idea, they don't maybe understand. They don't maybe understand addiction,
Mm-hmm.
and they aren't somebody who maybe is going to connect with the clientele that we're working with, because any sort of fraudulency on your behalf, they are going to immediately pick up on. These people have been, most of them, raised in environments where they have always had to question everyone's motives and trust. And, you know, they're very good
right.
at reading sincerity. And so I always have that in the back of my mind, you know, that I have to find the most sincere and
right.
the people that they're going to connect with, because that's when we start to build that community for them. When they feel like they can get out of jail and call Janie or call Bob or call, you know, and get the help that they're looking for, that's when they build that really good network that makes them successful.
Yeah. Oh, that's so important, because moms, we all have those credentials, right? We're going to go in and be authentic if it's something that you feel called to do.
Mm-hmm.
But because we know, we understand their pain and how you can't punish or lecture the pain out of them. So how many have gone through the program so far?
So we've had 78 students. About 10 of those were brought into the program at the beginning of COVID. We had to halt, and then the majority of those aged out. You know, they got out of jail or moved on in their process. And so we had to restaff. We kept the same, you know, if they were still in jail and had been originally staffed, we kept them. So really about 70 individuals have gone through the program.
So what can you tell us one of the best stories of somebody? I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of hopeful stories, but I'd love to hear of somebody who's graduated.
Yeah. So we have a lot. We have a 65% success rate right now, which is incredible. On the national average for private recovery centers is at best estimates, you're looking at like 40% success. So we're very proud of our success rate. And that success is not based off of just recidivism. That is me following these people and just keeping in contact with them and knowing, even if they've relapsed, but they haven't been arrested, we count that into our kind of negative pile. I like to call it our not yet pile, because they're just not there yet. But so I have a gentleman Two, actually, they were in the same group, our first group of men, and they were kind of the outsiders. They were not cool kids in the jail, which if you've ever spent any time in the jail, you'll know there's kind of a hierarchy of people.
Oh.
These two guys were very quiet. They were very small. They kept to themselves. And the first couple weeks of class, they sat in the back by themselves, and not because they just were insecure around the other guys. And so 2 weeks into class, we were talking, and I was teaching smart recovery, and I shared with the guys that my opinion was that 100% of people who struggle with addiction have also experienced major childhood or adolescent trauma. And I shared with them that that was a really hard thing for me to say because my son is an addict. And one of the gentlemen in the back of the room, one of these two very quiet guys, started crying.
Oh,
And
gosh.
he cried. And I said, "Hey, buddy, if you need to go into your room and get yourself together a little bit, or just take a few minutes, feel free." And he was like, "No, I'm fine." And he continued to sit and cry as we talked. And we talked about the different types of trauma that they may have experienced in their life. And he became super emotional. And so I stopped again and I said, "Hey, if you need to take a minute." And he said, "No." And he stood up and he said, "I have been abused sexually from the time that I was 7 until 14 when I left my house."
Oh.
And he just stood there and cried. And then one of our other participants, who was one of the cool kids in the jail, he was the oldest man in our group, and he was just a very nice guy, but very hard. Like he was
Sure.
tough and he was hard. And he stood up and he said, with tears rolling down his face, he said, "Me too."
Oh, gosh.
And several other guys started shaking their heads. And those who weren't maybe brave enough in that moment or comfortable enough in that moment, they just sat with their heads down. And it was so, I just stood and watched. And what I saw over the next couple of hours in that block, because it was our first men's block. So even when we had other instructors come in, I would sit and watch the cameras. And I saw these men physically move their tables closer together. I saw these two guys that had always sat in the back for the first 2 weeks just melt into the rest of the group.
Wow.
And so that particular group of men graduated about a year and a half ago. And with the exception of one, they are all clean. They are all still in contact with each other. And it has been one of these two very quiet guys that sat in the back that has made sure everybody stayed in contact. He's the one who reaches out when he feels like somebody's hanging out with somebody they shouldn't, or if he hears somebody's lost a job. I can't tell you how many of those men he has gotten jobs, or even he reaches out to our more recent graduates just to stay connected. He has actively worked to build this really good friend base and support system and community. And it has been amazing. He got married. He's got 2 little kids now.
Oh my
And it
gosh.
has been, he came
Wow.
back and spoke with our men just a couple of weeks ago, and really encouraged them in their journey, and, you know, shared with them, like, I just bought a truck. And not only did I buy a truck, but that meant I got my license back ahead of,
Yeah.
you know,
Huge.
I
So
did all of these things. It's possible. It
I'm
happens.
always talking about making your pain and making purpose out of your pain. That is
Mhm.
such a good example. And just curious, was faith a big part of his restoration, or do you
You
think?
know, so for many of our participants, it is.
Okay.
For that particular guy, it it quietly was, but maybe not on the same level that I've seen others. Yeah, I get to see both sides of that, and I will say the majority of the time when they get really involved with a church and they dig into their faith, they tend to be more successful, or I should say the majority of our kind of success stories have that faith base. But I still have some who don't,
Yeah.
but they're still really successful because they stay committed.
Yeah. Wow. That is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that story. That
Of
was,
course.
whew. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can picture that. What's been the most difficult part of implementing the program?
I would say the jail culture that's been, because it's discouraging when you hear. So I will tell you this: the first 6 to 9 months that I came in with JCAP. So I had already been coming to the jail for 2.5 to 3 years. The jailers did not talk to me during that time, except just barely. During the first 6 to 9 months of me coming in every single day, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, they mostly did not talk to me. And there was this rumor that I was making big money, like big money. Like they thought I was making $100,000 a year. And so
Oh my
after
gosh.
about 6 to 9 months of just kind of being like shunned by them, and sitting in this interview room, and I would bring my stuff with me every day back and forth. I was in Central Command one day and somebody made a comment about how much money I made. And I jokingly, because I wasn't making anything, I was like, oh yeah, I really make the big money. And they thought I was serious and that I was bragging. And so then there was even this bigger riff, like, yeah, she's going to throw it in our face that she makes more money than us.
It was just their insecurity. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. It was the craziest thing to me because a couple days later, somebody actually said, you really made a lot of people mad. And I was like,
what?
Wait, I don't actually get paid. And they were like, we all know you get paid. And I said, I don't get paid. I really do not get paid. There was nothing in the budget. Like they're not going to hire somebody to do this over hiring another jailer because we're really short staffed or whatever. And so I explained it. I'm like, you need to talk to the jail commander about it because he will tell you I don't get paid. And so then suddenly things shifted. They would be ordering lunch and they would say like, hey, do you want anything from McDonald's or whatever? And it was like this really like subtle little like, okay, we're okay with you being here now.
Yeah.
And so that was a whole year that I didn't get paid. And then when I started getting paid, of course, county employees, everything's public. They all knew that I was starting to get paid. And so many of them came to me and said, we're so glad you get paid now. You deserve this. Oh
my gosh, and breakthrough, like, girl.
Yeah. So seeing their change and honestly, the first time that I had a jailer come to me and say, do you know so-and-so, they're in F block and man, they could really use this program. I'm not going to lie. I went back to my office and cried because I just thought,
how far you've come.
This is, yeah. And the goal of the program is to not just help the inmates, but also to break the stigma of addiction. And I will tell you from my experience, that stigma of addiction does not just come from the community. The inmates and the people who struggle with addiction, they have this perception that they're not good enough, they're not wanted certain places, and it's not true. Most of the time, but they have that lack of self-esteem and that they don't feel like they belong, and so they project that what you project out you get back. And so so the goal has always been break that stigma. I don't want parents to feel the way that I did, and I'm sure you all did, when your son or daughter's mugshot was on Facebook for the first time, or that your neighbors found out your son was a heroin or meth addict. And there's so much shame and guilt that comes with that I needed the community to see that I live in a upper middle class neighborhood. I've been a stay-at-home mom. My husband is a professional. I was raised in a great family. My dad was a professional. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. This happens to everyone.
Right.
It's not in our
Parenting
trailer
flaw.
parks. It's
Yeah.
not that, yeah, it
Poverty.
this,
Yeah.
yeah, this is an
Yes.
everyone problem. And as I see those barriers coming down, those walls, those differences, whatever it is, that's really encouraging to me because
Oh.
that's where I feel like our community starts to heal.
So, oh gosh, that's so true. And you, uh, moms, Courtney has gotten our community so involved. I think that there was a lot of news articles that
Mhm,
centered around this change and
mhm.
um, asking the community to embrace it. But how did you get? How do you? How was the buy-in from the community? Like, how did you go out and get what you needed?
Yeah. So, you lose all pride and you just start asking.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Yeah. They could say
I
no.
start with the moon. Yep. And then, we walk it back and they offer what they can. And it has been amazing. There have been very, very few, if any, like nothing even comes to mind where I have asked an organization or a community member for something and been turned down for any reason. Um, you know what? Even to this. So I like our fitness instructors, I told you, I have literally cold called people that because I'm not a fitness workout kind of girl. And so I heard through friends of friends or whatever
Sure.
that, oh, this girl, she works at Giverny, which is like the fancy gym here in
Yeah.
town
Sure.
for women. And I cold called her and said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I'm looking for. Would you have any interest? And she cried and
Oh,
said, oh my gosh, my niece has struggled. I would love to
oh,
feel
sure.
like I'm
Everybody
doing
has a
something.
story. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you start to figure out that everybody does have a connection to this problem, that and they're looking, they want ways to help. And so not only have our community members been amazingly gracious, our community organizations, one of the great things that our sheriff did in the first 3 months of him taking office was he had me sit down and make a list of all of our community organizations that had anything remotely relevant to addiction. And I made a huge list. And then I called and I sent out invites, and we invited everyone to come to the Justice Building. We sat down in the multi-purpose room around one giant table, and we had representation from everybody there. And the sheriff started the meeting and he just said, we've got to get on the same page. We are not competing for business.
No.
We need to work together. And if your strong suit is counseling and your strong suit is offering clothing and food assistance, we need you to stay in your lane and do what you do best.
Yeah.
So what does everybody have to offer?
Wow.
And the conversation was amazing. We did have one organization that got up and left,
Oh,
and they have not worked well with any of the other organizations since. I mean, they didn't previous to that, and they're not thriving because we all support each other. And when I'm asked, um, for different resources in the community, I know exactly who to send them to because I know what everybody does.
right.
And so I can say, oh, this is where you're going to want to go for this. This is where you're
Yeah.
going to want to go for that. And they in turn are also able to do the same thing when they have someone come to them looking for counseling services, but their wheelhouse is commodities and things. Then they're able to say, you know what, that's not what we do, but
Uh, here's,
step
yeah,
over here. And
right.
so the communication has been amazing,
Wow.
and it introduced all of them to what we were trying to do, and they got so excited. And
Sure.
I mean, the number of emails and phone calls that I had after that meeting of organizations saying, hey, just to put a bug in your ear, here's what we can do. We would
Wow.
love to be able to support you in this. I don't pay for any classes except I do pay for our art therapy classes. I pay for our music class. and I pay for our mental health services through a grant. The everything else is donated to us.
Yeah.
There's occasionally I'll have different classes that come in and I will pay the instructors. Those are kind of what I call one and done classes. Maybe they're 2 or 3 sessions, but they're kind of specialty things that we feel are really important, and so we're happy to pay for them. We run off of donations at this point. We actually we have one grant through the Indiana Sheriff's Association that covers our mental health costs. Everything else is paid for through grants. Our graduation costs, our fitness uniforms, any books, materials that we have to have, everything.
Was that hard to find, the grants?
The grants are horrible. They are the very bane of my existence. They make me cry more than anything else. I hate them. And
how do you find them?
Agreed. Yeah. Okay. So, for Indiana, you go to Indiana Criminal Justice Institute. They are the grant handler for state money that actually comes from federal sources. So you're really applying for a federal grant, which makes them even worse. And they are nearly impossible to work through. We have applied for several. We have been granted one, and the others, they were so overwhelming and took so long, and no award actually came. Even we were granted the money, I guess. We were awarded the money.
Okay.
But then nothing ever came to fruition out of them. We did not get the funding. And so the Indiana Sheriff's Association money, however, is different. That's just a simple MOU that you sign. And our healthcare provider, our mental health care provider, actually signed an MOU with us and the ISA, and they are able to build the ISA direct, which is awesome because then I don't have to do it. So the grants are horrible. The local grants, we did have a grant through our K21 Health Foundation. That was a wonderful process, easy to work with them. It was great. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we ended up not using the majority of that funding, because it was a 1-year grant. And of course, we got it in March of 2020. And so that was disappointing. But we've had, Dane and Mary Louise Miller Foundation they have given us $20,000 in the last 6 months. Wow. And they're just huge supporters of the program. Yeah. I had a gentleman call me a couple of weeks ago wanting to know why we didn't have a donation tab on the sheriff's office Facebook page, because he's been trying to make a donation and he needs to know where to send this check. And he was he was really firm with it. And then a week later, I got a check for $1,000 from him, which is, just amazing. Yeah. And so we just are really lucky. And I feel like when you have every intentions of doing the right thing and serving others, that the Lord really provides. And I've seen that repeatedly. The first $10,000 donation that we got from the Dane and Mary Louise Miller Foundation, our funds were actually down to $500. And we were starting a new group, and I was panicked because I needed workbooks and I needed clothes and I needed all these things. And the first year of the program, my husband and I funded the majority of it because we just didn't have the funding. And so, at some point my husband was like, Court, come on.
How long is this going to go on?
And so, and not that he wouldn't have stepped in and been 100% on board with doing it, because we've seen the benefits of the program, but, it's a little taxing. And so, literally the week that I was stressing over all of this, I got a call from them saying, hey, we'd like you to write something up. We'd like to make a donation. And so the Lord provides, and it's an amazing experience to be able to be on the receiving end of that.
So cool. Well, thank you so much for everything that you do. Hey, ladies, if you have a question, unmute or raise your hand, unmute, and go ahead and ask Courtney. I'm going to check Facebook and see if we have questions there.
Okay.
Hi, Courtney. I have a question for you. Have you given any consideration to making this available to people after they come out of jail? Because I think that's a time that it's really important for them to have these skills. And there's a lot of people that aren't in jail that could probably really benefit from a program like this.
Yeah, so kind of, and kind of. So my 5-year plan is to actually have like JCAP phase 2 is what I call it, where upon release, they would
Okay.
actually go to a JCAP house that would be run co-op style, where they
Mhm.
would be able to, there'd be a live-in house manager. They would be responsible for the maintenance and the upkeep of the house, as well as the day-to-day operations of the house. So just like a co-op, if you're familiar with the co-op system at colleges, um, they have a semester project where they will redo the kitchen or they redo the roof or whatever needs to be done on the house. There is a house manager that kind of oversees all of the day-to-day things, but you also have a kitchen manager who's responsible for making up the meal plan for the week and the grocery shopping for the week. And you've got a house budget manager who handles, this is what your grocery budget's going to be this week. And you've got a program manager who makes sure that everybody's doing their classes and things like that. So it would give them an opportunity. One of the things that we really struggle with is that a lot of our participants don't have anywhere safe to go afterwards,
Yeah.
and we are deficient in our community in sober living. And sober living is difficult when you are in your own community anyway. And so if we can give them a place to go that is safe and where they still have that same structure, they still participate in classes and counseling, but they work. And so they get to practice their finance skills and they get to build their self-esteem through really seeing the success of what they're doing, all while still getting the counseling and services that they need. So that's kind of my long-term goal for this. Obviously it's lofty, it's pricey, and it's difficult with zoning and funding and getting communities really to wrap their head around that, because every community, including ours, still would like to believe that they don't have a problem and that those people don't live in their neighborhoods. And so it becomes a difficult struggle to get zoning for a house like that. And then a couple of other things that we do for our participants while they're in the program is we pair them up with a mentor from the community. And that mentor visits them while they're in the jail. They write letters. It's fantastic. And then once they get out, they still have that connection and they meet once a week and they become friends, really is the best way to put it. And so it's a really positive thing. We also do a family support group. So while the men or women are in the program, their families come to a family support group where they learn about what their loved one is learning about. And then they also learn about enabling and communication and boundaries and all those things that we've all struggled with. I mean, I shouldn't say we all, but I have definitely struggled with and didn't know that was a thing. Like for the longest time, I didn't know that boundaries was a term that I needed to know and know how to implement. And so we really try to educate the families and friends of the people in our program so that we're helping to build that support system. And in our community, we are pretty lucky because we do have a lot of groups. We've got AA meetings every single day of the week, multiple times a day. We have Smart Recovery, we have Celebrate Recovery. So we have a lot of options for that. We also have our domestic violence shelter here in Kosciuszko County. They do 2 hours of programming with our individuals every week. And through that, they do an intake with our individuals. And that intake offers our participants a full year of counseling and classes through their organization for free. And so when they get out and they can take their children, so their children can get counseling. It's just this amazing relationship that we have with them to be able to continue that support and process after they leave the jail.
And I
So
think
I don't know if that kind of answer.
I think it's really important too, any moms who are listening and your children are getting out of jail or in a position where they need help, to look for resources in your community, because just like we have them here, I'm sure that in your community, they have something too. It's just a matter of tapping into, the resources and talking to the right people. But by just inquiring, where, I guess, maybe starting with the hospital, or if you have a mental health facility in your community, start there and find out where resources are, or is there someplace else that you could recommend? They look,
So I think, the organization that I was talking about was the Beeman Home, a domestic violence shelter.
okay,
So
yeah,
every single one of our participants has qualified for their services because they have either lived in a domestic violence situation, they as a child or as an adult. Like, it doesn't matter when it happened in your life. And so when you think about the fact that all of our participants have struggled with childhood or adolescent trauma, it almost always falls under a domestic violence situation. And so,
sure.
um, so check with your domestic violence shelters, because they run off of state grants and they get money easily. And when they get new clients, they get more money. And so they are really, really anxious to help, because that's where their heart and their passion is.
Sure.
We have Fellowship Missions, which is the homeless shelter here in Kosciuszko County. They have their own recovery program that they run. They know all the resources. They now have started an addiction resource hub. So they are helping send people to rehabs and to recovery homes. They are a fantastic resource in our community for that.
Yeah.
So, like, Combined Community Services is, like, I often say, the most underrated organization that we have in our community, because they have like self-sufficiency programs and hand up programs, not a handout program, but a hand up, where they really guide people through becoming self-sufficient, getting gainful employment and parenting classes. Like, they do so much. And so really, just like, when my son first started to struggle, the first call I made was to our local mental health organization. For me, it was a brick wall. It was not helpful. I did not get any guidance whatsoever. I was told he was 18 and they weren't going to be able to help me because he wouldn't stay, which is incredibly frustrating when you are panicked as a mother, having,
Yeah.
and so I felt really lost and hopeless. And I started looking outside of our community, not knowing that all of this existed right here. So one of the things that the sheriff has done, like I said, we brought all of these community people together to sit around the table, but then we set up quarterly community resource meetings. So it was right in the jail lobby, and we had people from all of these different organizations man the table throughout a 2-day period. And we had every organization's information right there on the table. So people could just pop in, talk to somebody from Fellowship Missions, but they had questions about the Beeman Home. And because we have these great relationships, this organization was able to give the information on this organization, and offer all these pamphlets and brochures and any type of information or phone numbers that they needed, which was amazing.
And I've been in some of these meetings where you go and you're like blown away, because there are so many resources in the community, but unless you get together, you don't even realize what's there. So even in your communities, even if you wanted to do one little thing, it would be going around and finding the resources and making a one sheet or some kind of brochure for anybody who a parent of an addicted loved one has questions. So that might be another. I mean, there's just so many ways that we can pop into helping in our community. So is there anything, it's 11:30. I don't want to keep you too long, but is there anything else that we didn't cover that you want to share, Courtney?
I don't think so. I love your idea of being that person that gathers all the information to create that one sheet that has all of the community resources on it. I've been on committees where we set up community events. It was an evening program where we had different organizations talk about their role in addiction and what our community was facing. We had the mayor talk, we had the chief of police talk, the sheriff, moms of addicted loved ones. We've had people who ran recovery homes talk, and how it was kind of more of a brainstorming session of how we can better come together, but really just in having the meeting, we came together. And so get involved with that. Our local mental health organization generally has been the person to sponsor those meetings, and they are a great resource for that. But bringing the community together is essential for affecting that change. And I think that that's kind of where it starts, is having somebody put all those resources together.
Great idea. Gloria asked too, one of our moms, if you create a one sheet that could help other moms who might want to do this, just anything that you can just write down and outline, and maybe you already have it already. I'm
happy to do that.
Okay.
I will. So I will work on it next week. I am not a really great documenter of things. And so I don't have it, but I will put it together and then I'll email it to you, Michelle, and then you can send it out to whoever wants it.
And even if you just like write it out or type it out, and I can, I just hired a virtual assistant to help me, so I can get it to her too, and she can, put it on I don't know, just dress it up or something that we can hand out, or as a PDF that we can give out, just to inspire. And you have been so inspirational to all of us, because you, the idea was already out there, but if you hadn't been the driving force, none of this would have been happening for so many people right now. And I just want to personally thank you for that. And I'm sure that the rewarding part of your job, some of my moms are clapping. So the rewarding part of your job is probably seeing the transformation. Am I right? In the community,
absolutely,
in the jail staff, and in your students. So anyway, thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you for having me. I know I get really long-winded.
I love it.
Really
it's perfect.
Just because I am incredibly proud of what we've put together, and I am passionate about it because I see the success and I see the change in our individuals, and it is exciting. And I don't think anybody could not be as excited as I am about it, because I don't know. I often say, like, I won't know the ripple effect of this for a long time, but I had a girl who was in Smart Recovery well before JCAP. She came every week, twice a week. And then she went to prison, like from jail. She ended up being sentenced to prison, and she has stayed in contact with me for the last couple of years. And she called me a month ago and she was like, Courtney, I'm gonna be coming to your house for dinner. And I was like, because I had told her, like, when you get out, like, this is a girl that I would absolutely be friends with on the outside. Like, she's just fantastic. And we just clicked. And I always said, like, because I said one time, I was like, you're going to have to come to my house for dinner, And she was like, you would have me to your house for dinner?
And I was like, oh,
yeah, of course. And I was like, what do you mean you're coming to my house for dinner? And she's like, I'm getting out. Like, I got my modification and I'm time served. And so, like, we're so excited to be able to reconnect. And it is exciting when you see that change. And when she tells me, like, you were the first person to believe in me, and I owe this to you. And I'm thinking, no, are you kidding me? I didn't do anything except I was nice to you.
Believe in you.
Literally, that's where, I mean,
you believed in her. Yeah.
A good person, and not even a great person, just a good person who was kind. And you did the rest because of a little bitty thing that I did. And so it is exciting, and it kind of fuels you through the hard parts of the job. We had a young lady who passed away of an overdose who had graduated our program. And that is just a real blow to everything that you're trying to do. And you second guess everything when that happens.
Sure.
And because we are such a tight community, our little JCAP family, the number of past graduates that I had reach out to me after that situation happened, and they just said, we love you, and we're doing great, and don't beat yourself up over this. This isn't your fault. And just like the encouragement that they gave me was amazing. Sure. And just such a good reminder that we are a family. Like, we are the JCAP family.
Right. And wow, that they knew that you would feel that way, and that they took time to give back to you after what you've given them. they're human. We all want to be heard and understood. And oh my gosh, that is just so good to hear. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Oh, you're so inspirational. Does
Thank
anybody have any last minute questions? Oh, she's going to unmute. Hang on.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you so much, Courtney. You are amazing and you're doing wonderful things for our community. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for hopping in, and Courtney for being here with us today. God
Thank
bless.
you.
All right.
All right.
Make me
Thank
want to
you
move to
guys so
Indiana.
Yeah. Well, come on up.
We'll take you, Teresa.
I want to come.
Thank you. Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you guys.
Bye.
Bye, guys. God bless.
Thanks.